We now have a very special one-on-one session for you today. I now invite Dr. Adnan Chilwan, Group Chief Executive Officer of Dubai Islamic Bank from United Arab Emirates, to please join me on the podium. Please have applause.
Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. Would you like to sit here?
Yes, I'm okay.
Perfect.
Thank you.
We don't have special place to be seated on.
No, I'm okay. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we have your attention, please? Thank you. Good afternoon, first of all, and welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
How do you feel today?
Well, I feel rejuvenated after a very short sleep last night.
Okay.
But I feel energetic as always.
Exactly. We had a very interesting conversations and panelists before us.
Sure.
But this one-to-one session will have an additional value this year, and uniquely organized compared to the previous editions. The goal of conversation is to share ideas, address challenges and opportunities by listening to one of the key leaders within the sector. So first of all, we need to have a short introduction. You have led the Dubai Islamic Bank since 2013. And since then, the bank has achieved considerable growth and expansion. Any thoughts about that for the start?
First of all, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I know you've had a very long day, and probably I'm between you and lunch. So we'll try and make this very, very interesting, and I hope that there would be some key takeaways from our session.
Exactly.
Well, I've been with the bank for about a decade now. I started leading it in 2013, but I can say that we've been very fortunate. Within the UAE, there is an overbanked market with around 52 odd banks. So you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. And honestly, we had to do everything that we did in order to survive, because in a very cutthroat competitive market, if you're not on top of it, then you're out of the game. So I think everything that we did from 2013 has panned out very well for us. And I think I'm very, very fortunate that I sit here representing the institution that I come from, because mind you, this was the first Islamic bank in the world. And to not do anything other than what we've done so far would not be a testimony to the brand. So happy, but I think there's still a very, very long way to go for the franchise. And that's exactly what we are doing, and trying to expand in every part of the world wherever we can.
Exactly. Well, the bank moved toward more globalizations and expanded toward Asia and East Africa, et cetera, et cetera. So can you say what are the main challenges of global competition, and maybe for moving toward new horizons? What are the specific challenges that you as the bank leader encounter in these challenging times of expansions?
Yeah, absolutely. I think having seen the growth that we have within the domestic region, it was very important for us to look abroad. And from that perspective, what we did was, we said, having been market leaders within the UAE, you know, we started Islamic banking way back in 1975. So it's been 4 decades. It was very important for us to take this discipline in other parts of the world. When we started to look around us, and we decided, where are we going to go next, into which countries? You know, it was an obvious choice from where we were sitting. If you just visualize the globe and the map, Dubai is strategically focused. And from the United Arab Emirates, we wanted to look east and we wanted to look west. When we looked west, we saw Africa, which is a budding region. And we said that, you know what, we've got to connect Africa with Far East Asia. And in Far East Asia, we started looking at Indonesia. So from Dubai, we started capturing flows within Africa. Kenya, we now have operations within Kenya. And then we looked at Indonesia. We have operations in the ground in Indonesia. And we also looked at Southeast Asia, which was Pakistan. So we've made our own triangle, and we're trying to capture flows. And if you look at the population demographics of all these regions that I'm mentioning, it is skewed towards the Muslim population. So it was an obvious choice for us to go into these regions. More importantly, I see more opportunities than challenges. Because if you think that there are challenges in the works, then you're not going to step foot outside your house. So we saw the opportunities. I think, took a leap of faith and we went into regions that we were not operating in before. And I'm telling you, hindsight, NIDA is a luxury. When I look back, I think that was the best thing that happened to us. We've gone into regions that a lot of people did not frequent. A lot of people were really apprehensive. And I think we now have the advantage of being an early starter. So hopefully, maybe a decade from today, each of these franchises that we've invested in would do exactly what the core operations within the UAE has done.
Well, early starters definitely needs courage, as you already said, and to be brave to step outside of the comfort zone.
Yep.
So basically, the entry in the new market requires, as you said, complex adjustment, as we already know. But from the perspective of a business enterprise, what are the most important preconditions for considering investment into the new region and a new market, such as, for example, Balkan region or Bosnia and Herzegovina? What government can do in order to become an interesting prospect for this kind of investment?
Naida, it's a very, very interesting question. There is no one region or no one continent that is, lucrative to do business from a businessman's perspective. Which means that it is going to come with its own set of challenges. Now, whether it is geopolitical instability, whether it is political vendetta, whether it is inflation within the economy, whether you would see that there are wars going around. So there's never going to be an ideal time to go and do business. So you really need to have courage to go into new geographies. But what is important is that everything that you do has to make commercial sense from day one. You need to have the bigger picture. If you don't have the bigger picture in going into an institution or taking your institution into a different geography, then I think you're going to be caught between the rock and a hard place. It's very important for people to understand that, for example, when Dubai Islamic Bank started venturing out into each of these regions, there was never an ideal time. But we saw, is the environment stable? Are people opening their arms and welcoming us? Are we really required to be a part of those economies? I think that's very, very important. Yes. Is there a currency volatility or a currency stability? You don't want to go into a region or a country that from day one, your profits have been wiped out. Also, it's very important to see whether there is adequate human talent. Because, sitting from Dubai to operate in Indonesia or to operate in Africa or to operate in Bosnia or to operate in Pakistan, you cannot operate institutions by remote control, which means that you've got to have adequate human talent in each of these countries that you want to go.
Human potential.
If there is no human potential and there is no human talent, then you can kiss your money goodbye.
Exactly.
I think every investor, if you look at the Balkan states, or you take Bosnia as an example, or Indonesia as an example, they do not need your money for investments. They require the expertise that you have. They require the technical know-how. And they've got enough talent to make you more money than what you're bringing in. So I think from that perspective, when we look at geographies to go into, we look at certain amount of stability, but more important, are they welcoming us? Is there adequate human talent? And what is the potential? What are the population dynamics and demographics in each of these countries? So I think that's a very, very short checklist for us to choose any country that we operate in. Obviously, you need to make legislative reforms, you need to have economic reforms, you need to change the laws within the country to kind of, have the mode of operations that we want to have. But more importantly, do not go to any country where your heart is not there. I think that's the lesson that I've learned from those many years that I've been doing this. If you don't have open arms and you don't have hearts in the place, I don't think so any business can do well.
Always lead by the heart.
Absolutely.
Yes. So what is your view of cultural diversity as well as a factor when doing business? I think it's a very important thing that we shouldn't neglect in these terms of globalization, and how to handle them as a resource for success as well.
Well, everybody talks about globalization these days, and a decade ago people started, or 2 decades ago people started talking about globalization. I think globalization has only become successful because of cultural diversity. Because if you do not accept cultural diversity, then it's not called globalization. It's called localization. Because if there is just one type of people coming from either one religion, one ethnicity, one race, then that's not globalization. It is localization. Exactly. Globalization puts the very essence of globalization is around cultural diversity. And it tells you, the place where I come from, Dubai specifically, is a classic example of globalization. It's because it is successful because of the cultural diversity that is there. The ethnicities, the races, the multilinguistic opportunities that people have to come and practice, you know, whether they are practicing their business or they are practicing their ideals or their discipline. In my opinion, without cultural diversity, there's no globalization. If you remember, Naida, 2 decades ago when globalization started, people spoke about globalization as something other than cultural diversity. My opinion, I think cultural diversity and globalization go hand in hand.
Go hand by hand.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Well, as the CEO, well-recognized and established business leader, as we all know, what would you underline as the most important specific personal skill in order to achieve a success, all successful leadership as well? I mean, to what extent a personal posture can make a difference in today's world? In my humble opinion, it makes really a big importance and difference.
Yeah, obviously there are a lot of traits that are required by any leader, and I see so many successful leaders here. Some of them are politicians, some of them are entrepreneurs, some of them are technocrats. But in my very humble opinion, I think one of the most key important ingredients or traits that a leader should have is utmost humility and modesty. I think if you're not humble enough, you know, you'll not be able to survive. It's very easy to go and sit on top of a pyramid, but it's very difficult to stay there. And I think humility and modesty makes people more successful day by day. More importantly, as a leader, obviously you need to have a vision, and you need to make sure that there is no clutter in your head. You know, you have to understand the end game, and you have to understand the destination. Not everybody will subscribe to your views on day one, so you should have a heart of steel. And more importantly, you need to inspire everybody that works for you. If you do not inspire people day in, day out, you know, your organization will fail, and when your organization fails, you cannot be called as a leader. I think a leader is only called as a leader because of the team that he represents.
Lead by example.
Lead by example. And I think he's only an iota of the team that works for him, and he only shows the path. But in my very humble opinion, I think if you're not modest, you know, if you're not humble enough, I always tell my team also, you know, I say that being snobbish is a disease, you know, and you've got to be down to earth, never challenge gravity, because everything that goes up will come down one day.
Exactly.
So I think in my opinion, it's very important for people to understand that you need to be humble, you need to be modest, and you need to have a vision and inspire people day in, day out, because without them, you're not fit to be called a leader.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for this memorable 1-on-1 session. I will have many more questions, but unfortunately 15 minutes is done. So ladies and gentlemen, please, one more time, a round of applause for this beautiful gentleman, Mr. Adnan Chilwan.
Thank you
so much for an inspirational conversation.
Thank you very much.